preventing your stress. Stress begins with our thoughts. Let's consider this analogy of a weed, stress, in a garden of flowers, the rest of your life experience. Most stress management books and stress therapies focus on getting rid of the most noticeable parts of the weeds, the stem and leaves. They focus on the visual symptoms of stress, such as headaches, depression, irritability, insomnia, and many others. The hope is by doing away with the leaves, the weed becomes less noticeable, less obvious. It's not hard to find quick tips and tricks on how to cope with the weeds, or disguise the weeds, or even learn to live with the weeds. The problem with tips or quick fixes is they don't solve the problem of how the weeds got into the garden in the first place. Because the cause of the weed remains unclear, other symptoms inevitably show up, as more weeds surface somewhere else in the garden. The truth is that the weed isn't the problem. The problem is the seed. Thoughts are the seeds of stress. Thoughts always precede your emotions, and they always precede the activation of the stress response. The best way to get at the root of the problem of stress is to figure out how the weed seed lodged itself in the soil. This set of videos, along with the mindfulness videos and the stress reduction videos, will help you do two things. The first is to understand how the seed got into the soil and what to do about it. The second is to learn how to get rid of the weeds that are already a part of the garden. Here's a little story. Once there was a man sitting at the edge of a river. It was a wide and deep river with a swift current. After sitting for a while, he began to notice people floating down the river. As he continued to observe, he realized they weren't happily floating, they were struggling for their lives. The river was turbulent and had a dangerous undercurrent. This made it extremely difficult for people to swim to the bank to safety. Recognizing the dangerous situation, the man quickly started doing all he could to try to help these unfortunate people get out of the river. He grabbed nearby branches to reach to them. He even found a rope that he could throw in hopes that one or two would catch the other end and be pulled to safety. He worked and worked until he used all of his energy and resources. He saved a few, but he wasn't able to save everyone who desperately needed his help. Sadly, he watched as others fought to escape their demise. Their only hope was that perhaps someone downstream would rescue them. Then a thought occurred to him. I should go upstream and stop these people from getting into the water in the first place. That would prevent this horrible problem. So he ran up the river, still watching the weary souls helplessly fighting the raging water. Soon, he encountered a man who was tossing these people into the river. A large sign posted nearby said, "Enjoy the most exciting ride of your life." People who wanted a quick thrill were lining up in droves, not understanding what their ultimate fate might be. They just did what everyone else was doing. So, observing this, the man who had been downstream stepped in and immediately stopped the person from throwing in any more people, thus saving all those in line from certain peril. This rescuer had recognized that there were two locations where he could help save the people. One place was downstream, after the swimmers had already realized that they were in danger. The best place, however, where he could do the most good, was the spot where he prevented them from being tossed into the river. Similarly, there are two places where you can successfully do something about your stress. The first place is before it begins. On the fight or flight diagram, the X represents the point where you begin to perceive conditions as being somehow threatening. The second place where you can manage your stress is after the activation of the stress response has begun and you need to turn it off. This is the Y on the diagram. The most valuable place and where you do yourself the most good is at point X. This is to prevent your stress before it ever starts. The purpose of these stress prevention videos and the mindfulness videos is to teach you simple, powerful, and effective ways to prevent stress from happening in the first place. We know, however, that because people get wrapped up in the craziness of life, they oftentimes forget how to keep the seeds out of the garden. At that point, they still need to know effective ways to turn off the stress after it has started. I will teach you how to do that in the stress reduction videos. So let's get started by watching Thoughts Precede Emotions. You are going to feel so much better.